guys, it's Robin, RsIslandCrafts. Welcome to my craft room. This is my WiP It Wednesday video where I show you whatever I worked on in the craft room in the past week, whether it's just a little bit for a couple minutes or I've worked on it for hours and hours and hours. I didn't work on anything for hours and hours and hours this week. When I started setting up for this video, I only had 3 projects and I thought, wow, that is such a small amount for me. I never have just 3 projects that I've worked on. So I started looking around the craft room and I'm like, okay, I worked on this and I worked on this and I worked on this. I'm like, okay, that's better. That's more of my style. Now, I don't think I've worked on quite as much or got as far on projects as I did last week, but that's okay. It's the ebb and flow of crafting. Everything is different every week. The obvious new one right here is I've got it all pin basted, my Wonky Log Cabin Green Monster quilt. I'm using a new to me batting. This is the LaLone cotton with scrim. I usually use the warm and white, but they were both on sale at Joann's, and this LaLone was less expensive than the warm and white, so I thought I'd go ahead and give it a try. It had a lot of great reviews on Joann's, so I wasn't hesitant to try it. It's just, I know I like my warm and white, but I thought, well, whatever, I'll go ahead and try something different and see how it works. It's nice to experiment on something that's a smaller quilt. Now, I would not experiment on it maybe for a king-size quilt, but for this little lap-size quilt for a small child or a lap quilt for an adult on the couch, I thought it'd be fun to just test it out and see how it works. It's still cotton, so it's going to give me that wrinkly, crinkly effect that I like. But since it's a new to me batting, I pin basted the heck out of this thing. I used every pin that I have. I think I have a couple hundred pins, so, I mean, I do normally put them about hands width apart, but I have them in all different sections to make sure. I put a lot in the green sashing to hold that nice, so that was nice and sturdy and steady while I was quilting my squares. But then I also did my squares really good so that while I'm quilting them, the outside edges of them don't get all ripply or anything. Because like I said, I'm not sure how this batting will work underneath the machine. I have no worries that it's going to turn out perfectly fine. Sometimes different battings handle differently and you might have to do something that you don't normally do with your regular battings. So that's all. I just, whatever. Plus, as I got pinning, then it became a challenge to see if I could put every single pin that I own into one quilt. In the past, I have used it, I've made baby quilts that are 36 by 36, and I think I've basted at least 3 or 4 quilts without running out of pins. So it's kind of funny that I've got all my pins, don't put all your eggs in the same basket or something. I think that's what my grandmother used to tell me. Or don't count your chickens before they're hatched. But yeah, so that one is all pin basted and ready for some quilting this week. I never put a pin to mark my progress on this scarf. This is the Mistake Rib scarf. It's just a generic pattern. It's more of a stitch pattern than a scarf pattern. It has some nice little stretch to it. And it's supposed to hold like the little ridges where you have your purl stitches and stuff. It's supposed to hold the heat in, so it's supposed to be a very warm scarf, so it's going to be nice for someone who lives in a really cold area. But I was somewhere down here last week, just barely started, so I've gone all the way up to here. This has been one of my 5-minute here work job, a little bit before bed, just knit on it. When you're knitting on something that you have to knit and then turn versus like a hat where you knit in a circle, it does take a little bit more time to work on it, even though it's a simple stitch, because you are turning it back and forth instead of just knitting, knitting, knitting. But what I like about this is, first, I like this yarn. It's got all the different little speckles in it. It's got a light brown, a dark brown, kind of a golden rusty color. But with this scarf, it doesn't matter when you wear it, it's going to be reversible. So both sides look exactly the same. So when you put it around your neck and get it all twisted, because some scarves, like if you have a cable design, it only stays on the front. So if you put it around your neck, you have to be careful that it lays just right down the front of your jacket so you're not getting the back of it. But this one is the same both sides. For someone who watches my Friday Sew With Me videos, you have already seen my wonky stars that I'm making for my daughter's bed render. I have not got past the original 2, 4, 6 that I made, but I'm hoping to get most of these done. Once I get a chance to sit down and just chain piece them like crazy, I'll have them all done, and it'll just take me a little bit to get them all together. Because you make all these the little legs of the star first, so once you chain piece all of those, the rest just flies. Then I'll have to decide how I'm going to actually put it all together and make it large enough. Though I did find out my daughter definitely has a double bed. I told my husband that it wasn't a queen, but you know, he thinks he's right all the time. That's how men are, right? So anyway, she's got a double, so I don't have to make it any larger than I originally planned. So things are going to work out pretty good. I put a little bit of work on it. Oh, another 1.5 to 2 inches on my 3-color cashmere cowl. I've started to drag my feet on this a little bit. I'm making this for a Christmas gift, but I'm getting a little discouraged with knitting this. I love the way this is turning out. I really do enjoy the way the red and white stripes are going with the purples. I didn't think that they were going to work good, but since it's just little narrow stripes, I think it's working really well. But when talking to the person that I'm giving this to as a surprise, this person was mentioning that they don't really care for items like this, that it's not their preference to wear during the winter. Wah, wah, wah. So there's really no sense in making this to give to that person if they're not going to actually use it. Because you've seen I've been working on this for several weeks now. I've put a lot of time into it. So I think I'm just going to go ahead and put this down for a minute, maybe just for this week. And then I'll pick it back up and finish it, and I'll put it in my shop. And I'm sure there'll be someone who will love it and who will actually want to wear it. So I don't want to make it, I don't want to force it upon someone who isn't going to want to wear it, or who feel obligated to say all nice things and thank you and feel like they have to wear it if they see me or something. I want it to go to someone who's actually going to enjoy it. So this is going to go on hold for the week so I can get all my other gift knitting caught up, and then I'll come back to it. I still want to have it finished before the end of November. That has always been the plan, and I don't want this to drag on into the next year. And surprisingly, that's it on my knitting. I didn't pick up Robbie's socks. So that's another project that I'm going to really, that's probably what's going to replace the 3-color cashmere cowl, is I'm going to have to really start knuckling down for Robbie's socks to get those done. I started working on the embroidery on this project that I'm finishing up for someone. When you look at the design, you think as a regular crafter, I don't know, maybe I'm the only one, but I think that, oh, that looks real easy. You're just doing these little stitches. It's going to go super, super fast, right? Well, then when you sit down and you have to start working on it, then you're putting hours and hours into it. It's a little bit wrinkly. It needs to be pulled out a little bit and give it a little bit of a stretch. I put this much in up here. It took me a few hours this past week. It was a very nice and relaxing project to work on. They're just straight stitches and split stitches. It's stitches where you make a stitch that's 3/4 of an inch, and then you come up and split it and make another 3/4 of an inch, and then it just fills in all this area. Now I know you see it's a little bit wrinkled, but once you go ahead and when you mount this, you're gonna stretch it like this and like this, and it's gonna get stretched on stretcher bar on some type of a mat or something when you frame it. So any little wrinkles are gonna get stretched out. Plus you have it, because I've had it in the hoop and stuff like that, so it's gonna work out. I made sure that all these stitches, I had this little bit of a, seemed like it might be a little tight over here. So I went ahead and made sure that all these stitches over here are nice and loose. I don't have this tight in the hoop. That's one way to make sure, because you're just doing this with a stitch. You're just laying the wool right down on top of the fabric. Well, you're going down in the back, of course. But in the motion of going down to the back and coming back up, if you pull it too tight, you're going to shrivel your fabric in. So even just a little bit is fine, because like I said, it can get stretched out. Especially if you get it a little bit wet, the wool will stretch. But you don't want to crinkle it in so that it gets in tight like this, and that's not going to be able to get fixed when you stretch it out. So I made sure that when I have it in my loop that the fabric is really loosey-goosey. You can kind of push down on it like this, so that when I'm going like this, and every now and then instead of going completely around, I'd go down and then come up this way. So that way you're not wrapping it like this and pulling it tight. So I just have a little bit more, probably a couple more hours over here, and then I can go ahead and get started down on the bottom. So that's been very relaxing to work on. I could just sit here and work on this, and time passes by so quickly that I don't even realize it's been 2-3 hours. I just wanted to show you the little embroidery I did. If you're not following my embroidery series, you might not see this. I went ahead and I did this leaf here. This used the stem stitch right up the center, and then we learned the lazy daisy stitch this week. I haven't gone past like the video. I'm only doing what I'm showing on the video, so it's going to take quite a while to get this filled in. But a lot of it, like you have this stitch here, and then this one's the same, and this one's the same. And then a lot of these are just a lazy daisy, so they will all go fast once I start filling them in. So while it looks like there's a lot of elements on here, it's a lot of repetitive stitches. So it's really good. So once you learn it here, then you can apply it into all these different other places, and it's going to be the same stitch, and you'll have good practice. So by the time you finish this project, you'll really know those stitches very well. So I started getting ready to do some felt ornaments. I've been doing an ornament of the month. Attic Heirlooms, every month this year, they've had a free ornament, but it's only free for the month. So January's ornament, as of February 1st, is now $1.99 or $2.99 to purchase the ornament. But then February's becomes free for the month of February. So I've got January. I'm just waiting on December's now. I wanted to get most of them. Let's face it, I don't want to do just one at a month. I wanted to make sure I had a whole bunch done so I can just sit down and do a bunch at the same time. If I'm going to sit down and do the little hand embroidery to tack all these felt pieces down, I'm sorry, I print everything in black and white. It saves a little bit on the ink. Then I want to go ahead and do a bunch of them at once because it only takes a few minutes. It'll probably only take 15 or 20 minutes, if that, to do an ornament. I'm probably underestimating as usual, and it might take a half hour, 45 minutes, but we'll see. Some of them have more, like there's a lot of little flowers that are embroidered on here, so some of them will take a little bit longer than others. But they're mostly all just stitched down. Like all of these are the blanket stitch or the buttonhole stitch, however you want to call it. And then you do a little, kind of like a lazy daisy for the orange noses. And then you have French knots for the eyes. So I'm just waiting on December's now. Of course, that won't come out till December 1st. And this is going to be the one that you have this whatever color I chose. It looks like they chose black too, but I chose black for the back of my ornament. And then you have the front of your ornament. You stitch all of your pieces on here, and then you stitch it onto your backing piece so that all those the floss and everything doesn't show up on the back of your ornament. Now the way I do mine is because you can't really draw on felt, because when you cut it out, even if you try to cut on the inside of the lines, which would be really difficult when you're cutting out small little snowballs like this. Those are really, really tiny. So what I do, they had us, like if you're using actual wool felt, they had you using a fusible and fusing it onto your project. But I'm using just an acrylic felt, just your basic, simple, cheap felt you get at Michael's and Joann's. I'm slowly trying to switch over to all wool felt. I have a little bit of a wool felt stash going, but I didn't have enough to do all these projects. Plus I want to use up this acrylic felt that I have now, so when I'm ready to switch over and I've built up my stash, I'll have all the colors I need. So anyways, I took some freezer paper. Now I know not all countries have freezer paper, but you can purchase it on Amazon. I just picked mine up at the grocery store in the same aisle where you get tin foil and wax paper and stuff. And freezer paper has this waxy side on the back, and when you hit it with your iron, it'll stick to whatever you're putting it on. This is what I use when I do my English paper piecing also. So when I do my hexagons, I cut my hexagon out of freezer paper, then I fold over and stitch and blah blah blah. So I draw it on the freezer paper. I did at a very light, I think I used something wool. I think I used the wool setting for my iron and just hit it a little bit because I didn't want to melt this acrylic felt. And it's just enough, like I said, it just barely holds it on. You don't need it to be on too tight. It's not like you're gluing it on. And then I'll take my little scissors and I'll trim all the way around. And then I can put it either side. I can flip it over this way onto my background piece, or I can put it this way, so depending on whether or not I want to have it mirrored. Most of the time, like designs like this, it's not going to matter which way you flip it. But like this one, since they're using the fusible, they had it flipped from the original, but it's not like my ornament's going to be hanging next to 17 other people's and you're going to see that mine's flipped the other way. I actually kind of like him in the left-hand side versus the right. So yeah, then after I just trim all these out, then I'll take my little embroidery floss and I'll stitch them all down. And I'll enjoy a nice Sunday morning or afternoon just sitting here relaxing, watching some of the Christmas movies that are starting to come out, and I'll just work on my little felt ornaments. I have them in an internet box. This is CenturyLink, is our internet provider, our local telephone company here. So when we get a new modem, they give us these nice little boxes. They got green on the inside, and this has all your stuff in it. But I thought, I've been saving them. I only have a couple because it's not like we need modems all the time. But they're these nice little narrow boxes. They're smaller than a pizza box, but they're a little bit deeper. And they're just the right size for corralling a small project like this. So that's it for me this week. I hope you guys have gotten a lot done in your craft room. How you guys doing on your Christmas projects? I know I've been harassing you every week about it, but we are in November now. Gift season is coming up really close. So if you're going to be creating something crafty for your friends and family, you might want to start soon. I hope you guys have an excellent week, and I'll see you guys next week. Bye.